Who is the real culprit that's causing our misery and suffering in life, our unhappiness? And before we do that, we'll just hear from Judah. Dioro horona ierietsine heo kibele olava diorumba kiboro mare verunda iste isteana kibiri uduliana he. Hello, dear and precious ones all around the world. We are Judah. We are your beloved angel friends. We are joining together with the Pleiadian sisters in this shared communication and transmission. And this is very common. The Pleiadians love to work with the angelic realm, and the angelic realm loves to work with the Pleiadians. The Pleiadians being incarnate, the angels being disincarnate, pure representation of Source, and an ever present support. Lifting up the downtrodden, the brokenhearted, the disenfranchised. Angels are the friends of all beings. The constant companion. As you shed the density of your own thoughts and emotions, your own experiences, you will quite naturally experience the presence of angels. And even until that moment for you, angels are still present, ever working behind the scenes on your behalf, ever working behind the scenes on your behalf. Worry is such a waste, my dears. It is a waste of your precious life force energy. For there are no worries in truth. Angels are constantly working behind the scenes on your behalf. Look at the miracle that you are. You have brought yourself to this place. Here you are, receiving the love and the wisdom of the angelic ones who are constantly in the presence of your Mother, Father, God, in constant service and obedience. We know you cannot understand our disposition, for in your mind to be a servant is a bad thing, a wicked thing, an undesirable thing. So you cannot fully understand what we are saying to you here, but know and understand that we constantly bow before the Mother, Father, God in complete reverence and honor and obeisance, for our trust in God is complete, is complete, is complete. We do not know or understand this experience of doubt, for the Father, Mother God has never given us any reason to doubt. There is no reason to doubt, my dears. Each of you has come here with water to drink, food in your belly, and you are here in the loving embrace of angels and of your human counterparts, your new and old friends. What could be better than that? What could be better than that? And even if your physical body has worn out in some way or given over to a dense or disease experience, this even this is temporary. You are on your way to an angel body. You are on your way to a light body. You are on your way to a body of youth and beauty that never fades. Hmm? That never fades. Hmm. 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 Look at this one. Watch her age in reverse, age in reverse. For there is a beauty that resides on all those who are in the presence of the infinite creator. And nothing heals like peace. Nothing heals like presence. There is no pill, there is no prescription, there is no doctor, there is no procedure that can compete with presence, being in presence. Many of you feel it even now running through your body. You feel the life force energy coursing through your body. Mm-hmm. 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 Do not trouble yourself about what others are troubled about. And the mind will say to you, you're a fool. You're a fool not to be troubled about this thing happening on the world stage or that thing happening on the world stage. You're a fool not to worry about your child. You're a fool not to worry. You've just been given a cancer diagnosis. You're a fool not to worry because you're homeless. We say nonsense. Be a fool then. If that's what it means to be a fool, be a fool. Trust, 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 trust. There is nothing to worry about. The Christ said it this way: do not worry about tomorrow. Today has enough troubles of its own. There's not a single bird that falls from the sky of which the Maker is unaware. Don't worry about what you're going to eat, where you're going to lay your head. Worry about nothing. The disciple came to Christ and said, Lord, I'm ready. I'm going to follow you. But the master responded with the truth. The master looked at the one and said, are you sure about that? The Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Foxes have dens, birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Are you sure? Are you sure? You see, some of you are wasting your life force energy trying to undo what is. But what is what is meant to be. And if you can embrace what is, then you will find peace. And you may find yourself following the Master, living like the Master, being a Master. Following the Master, living like the Master, then becoming a Master. You see, the things that you are suffering over are things that you have been told should not be, because the world, the people, places, ideas around you tell you this should not be. But what do they know? Be a fool. Start from the beginning. Be a zero. Be a nothing. Wake up in the morning knowing nothing, being nothing. Be a blank page upon which divinity can write a beautiful story. Speak a beautiful word. Sing a beautiful song. Be a vessel for wisdom. Be a vessel for love. Be who you really are. Who you really are is the one you were born in the moments you were born, in the moment in which you exited your mother's womb. No worries, no cares. Content in your mother's arms, yes? There is so much grace. Grace is found in presence. Presence is found in meditation. Worship is found there as well. Who are you worshiping? To what? To whom do you pray? Do not worry about that. Understand that all that is this thing to which you've assigned this three-letter word of God, all that is beyond your capacity for understanding. And so why trouble yourself over that? Why trouble yourself to figure out or understand what is beyond understanding, with that which is full of mystery? This is part of why you are here, is to experience various aspects of all that is, of God, of divinity, and to experience it within yourself. Where is this one called the Holy Spirit? Where is this one? It's in you. The Holy Spirit is your personal spirit connected to the divine Spirit of God. We don't care too much about what words you use. We only care that you are with us and in us, and we are in you in presence. Even Judah, the consciousness of Judah is beyond your imagination, really, truly, beyond your imagination. Some of you will be graced to see Judah in the coming year with your physical eyes, and you will be dumbstruck. You will be unable to express what you have seen with words. Even in this room, there will be those soon, very soon, who will see angels manifest in the room with their physical eyes. Already, you each and all feel the lightness, the brightness, the lift, the elevation of this space. Intention is everything. Freedom comes when you release all the things you thought you wanted or thought you wanted to be, and simply become a house for presence, a house for spirit, an empty out container, a know-nothing, a nobody, content simply to be, to breathe in and out, to exist. Life is lived one moment at a time. Everything else is false. Yesterday is gone. It is over. It is only a fingerprint on your mind. It is only a knot, perhaps, in your neural network, a knot which can be undone and rewired. All that is real is this moment in time. Feels good in here, doesn't it? So who is this real culprit, this sabotaging our happiness? Is it Kamala or Trump? No. Is it the financial system? Is it our parents? Our ex-partner? Our current partner? The dog that won't start barking? Who is the real culprit? The sabotaging our happiness. It's none of those things. It is the false ego self. So we talk about this a lot in the Judah channel, and we're going to keep talking about it because As you get it, you get set free. Yeah? The false ego self is the only obstacle to enlightenment. Winston Churchill once said, "When there is no enemy within, the enemies outside cannot hurt you." The false self consists of everything negative in a person. It's the nature of the false self to be envious, to be stressed, to be worried, to feel helpless, to feel angry, to be despairing, to be critical, unstable, crazy, foolish, everything else that you can think about. That's the opposite or in enmity with happiness. So religions many times call this false self the devil or sin nature. Philosophy sees it as our lower nature. Modern psychologists call it the ego. But whatever name you give it, this false self is the cause of all the inward pressure which explodes in all the division, divisiveness, strife that we see in the world today. Wars, crime, disease, other types of social injustice and tragedies. So tonight we're going to deep dive and become aware of who this false self is, how it operates, how it's deceiving us, deluding us, and stealing our happiness in order to really embrace our divine self. So there'll be an empowerment that comes. The true self, our enlightened self, is like those, oh, by the way, I'm a new grandma again with twins, beautiful twins.
Boys, girls.
Twins.
A girl and a boy.
Oh.
And it was unexpected. She didn't know until 2 weeks before she delivered that it was going to be twins.
Oh.
So they are beautiful. You know, when those little babies, the sweet little baby girl came out first, and then it was another whole 27 hours before the little boy was born. Yeah, so I said, Brianna, you get my vote for president. After going through that, you can do anything. But this little sweet baby girl came out first, and I held her most of those 27 hours until baby 2, little boy, was born. And you know, there's just such innocence and patience, and she just laid there in my arms. You know, this type of innocence and perfection is who you really are. It is your true self. You know, when that sweet little baby girl came out of the womb, she wasn't thinking, I wonder what I'm going to be when I grow up. I wonder if my parents have money. I wonder what level of education they have. I wonder where I'm going to go to school. I wonder if my brothers and sisters are going to be nice to me. I wonder if They don't think of any of those kind of things. They're just in their perfected state of existence, just breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. This is how the true self is. Everything that happens from that point forward is conditioning. Everything that happened from that point forward is conditioning. Okay? Some of it's good, some of it's not. We'll talk about that a little bit tonight. So for our discussion tonight, we're going to use the words false self or ego mind interchangeably. Okay? This is this sort of illusionary entity that lives in the mind, that is a collection of thoughts about what we are, what life is about, who other people are. This is the false self or the ego mind. And then we'll also use the word higher self or true self and superconscious interchangeably. Okay? So we're going to be comparing and contrasting the false self, which is the ego mind, and the conditioning, to the true you, which is our higher self. I hear one of the primary questions that we get in the Judah channel is, how do I connect to my higher self? So tonight is going to be a great time to learn how that happens. So before we dive into that, what's the purpose of a spiritual journey anyway? Like, what's the point? One of the things that I think about frequently, this is a little bunny trail, now that I've left Christianity, I think that in the New Age, we think that we are not a part of a religion. If we're in the New Age culture, we think that we're not religious people. But trust me, the New Age is also a religion. It has its own set of lingo, its own set of practices, traditions, ways of talking and thinking. So I just say that so that we can all be aware, that we don't go unconscious in any context with any group of people, but that we stay mindful of how we are allowing ourselves to be conditioned by in any circumstance, including this one tonight. Okay? I'm not here to offer up a new and different religion to you. I'm here to empower you in some way to have your own relationship with God and be your own powerful self that God brought you to this earth to be. So what's the purpose? There's only one purpose for a spiritual journey, just one. And that's to relinquish the false ego self so that you can be who you really are, which is pure consciousness, like that little baby. No thoughts in that sweet little girl's head, not a thought, not a care, not a worry. Just breathing in and out and being. So the purpose is to get rid of everything that's not that's not serving you, that's not serving your happiness and your purpose, your soul's purpose for being here. The most important task for a spiritual person to learn is how to disarm and dissolve this false self. You know, I hope that you'll never say, I'm an alcoholic. Don't ever say, be careful about what you say, I am fill in the blank. Don't say, I am homeless. No, you're a person who doesn't own a home at this season of your life. But that doesn't mean that definition should follow you your whole life long. That's not who you are. Others can help you develop an awareness of the false self and how it operates, which is what we're doing here tonight. But only you can do the work to release it. I cannot do it for you. Judah can't do it for you. And this is the purpose, primary purpose of the Treats program. One of the reasons why I created it was because I was helping people in one-on-one sessions to release this false self, this ego self with Judah's insight and understanding. And it was very effective, but I wanted to speed up that process for people. I didn't want that process to revolve around me or being connected with Judah. I wanted to empower people to be able to clear these things on their own, to identify their false self and get rid of it permanently. To the personality, this is key, to the personality, the character, removing the ego from the throne of one's life feels like an act of pure suicide and total self-annihilation. There's a few of you that have been through that. Give me a wave if you're one of those. Yeah. I've been through 2 or 3 layers of this. Because removing the false self is removing the person that we falsely believe that we are, which we are not. And the ego gets really nervous when you become awakened to, oh, this is not me, this is the ego, it's not me. The ego gets nervous and it will dig in its heels and really throw everything it can at you to avoid losing control over you. And so this can have, for some people, the effect of making you feel like you're going crazy, you're losing your mind, you should be locked up, you want to kill yourself. You know, Chuck and I work with a lot of people that go through this dark night of the soul where they begin to be aware of their ego and their ego really digs in with them. And we see a lot of precious people go through this. And we are even losing some beautiful souls on this earth to suicide because they are in a true awakening. They look around them and they think, wait a minute, some things aren't right here. But they don't have anybody to walk them through this process. And so they feel like the odd man out. They really go into a place of desperation. And if they don't have if they go to the doctor just puts them on psychotics or sends them to the mental ward. Yeah, because the doctor doesn't know what's going on. So then they just medicate them, which makes the problem even worse, right? So I don't want to go too much into that, but just to say, the ego, I read this line in the Course of Miracles. It was a game changer for me. It said the ego would rather see you dead than see you free. And personally, I lived that line. When I read that line, it was a deep comfort for me. Because when I really began to confront my ego, the false self, it really was doing its best to dig in and to not let go. So this is sometimes called the dark night of the soul, but in truth, it's actually the dark night of the ego, not the soul. Yeah, it's underneath that, all of that, is the soul in its perfection, in its innocence, in its beauty, like that little babe, sweet baby. So one of the things I want to spend a little time on tonight is giving a little deeper teaching about when we talk about ego, generally in these contexts, we're talking about the negative aspects, but the ego is not strictly negative. Okay. There's nothing wrong with having an ego. Everybody has one. I have even seen fully enlightened beings act out in their ego to some degree. I have seen that. So, and that's a little, I know that can be a little game changer to think that thought. But what Judah said to me, it's in the book, is that the ego for an enlightened person is like a sweater that you put on when it gets a little chilly and you take off when it gets a little warm. So enlightened beings learn how to use the ego conditioning to serve a purpose. Yeah, but it's not, they are aware that it's the ego, it is not who they are. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with having an ego. All of us have it. It's the unbalanced ego that we'll be focusing on tonight, and we're going to call that the false self. So here's a little metaphor that might help you understand what the ego is. So I want you to imagine for a moment that all that is, God, consciousness, the supreme infinite creator, we're going to use the metaphor that all that is, that God is like the sun. Got that? God is like the sun. Okay. So all that is, all consciousness, let's say, all light, all life, all love emerges or emanates out from this sun, this singular sun. Okay. So now I want you to, so imagine like when you wake up in the morning and the sun is shining, it blankets the whole earth, doesn't it? On that side of the earth. It blankets the whole earth. It's shed abroad everywhere. It's pervasive. It touches everything. Nothing is hidden from it. Okay. So then why are we in these little bodies having these experiences as human beings? Well, a portion of that sun, of that light, of that essence of the supreme infinite creator being is resident in us in what we call our soul, excuse me. Our soul is our divine aspect. It's the part of us that connects through the Holy Spirit. We know this is true because if one of you dropped dead tonight, the way we would know that is because there's no life in you, right? There's no essence, no spirit. It's that indefinable, intangible thing that animates the body. So this soul, I want you to imagine that the soul is a part of this sun, this aspect of God. It's a ray, it's a focus. It's a focus into your body. So let's pretend that this magnifying glass is Mike. Okay. So God, all that is, decided it wanted to learn some things about itself, have some experiences. So it focused a portion, a sliver, a fractal, a piece of itself into this guy named Mike Chartrand, as I say right, from Canada. And he had these parents and this experience and this education and these siblings and lived in this area and has this accent and all the things that make Mike Mike. And he's good at doing these things and not so good at doing these others, and all of that is his personality. So the ego is the personality, it's the character. So this ray of God, this aspect of God, shines through Mike. Now, what he chooses to focus that ray upon determines the experience, right? So the ego, we can focus it. Have you ever seen a ray of sun, someone catch a ray of sun with a magnifying glass, and what do they use it for?
Start a fire.
To start a fire. So this Mike, all his experiences and thoughts, feelings, emotions, everything about him is focusing an aspect of God in the earth. So he gets to decide, is he going to build a fire to keep someone warm, to bring them comfort, to cook a meal? Or is he going to focus it on his enemy and burn their house down? Yeah. So how we focus our personality, our character, the character will determine our experience. The false self is the one that uses its experience, its power to burn the house down. And then there are good parts to the ego, which then can bring warmth. So an example of this, part of my personality as Angie is to teach. I love teaching. That's part of my personality. I was educated to be a teacher, an elementary school teacher, a teacher of immigrants. I loved that. That's a skill set that I have. And within that skill set, I can use that skill set in my personality to focus the life force energy of love and divinity to create something beautiful for the people, the students that I teach. Yes? So that's a good aspect of ego. Our ego is our talents, our skills, our experience, our practical knowledge. And when God shines through that, when divinity shines through that, it's a blessing to the earth. But then there are all these other parts, ego parts of conditioning that aren't serving us. So that's what we're going to focus on. So let's talk about the false self versus the true self. The false self is unstable. It's unbalanced. The true self is balanced. It's stable. It's integrated into the higher self. The false self is the adapted child. And we did a night on this that you might be able to go back and find. I'll see if I can put the link in the comments section for you guys. The false self is the adapted child. The true self is the free child. Okay, so adapted child, free child. So I'll give you a fun little example of this. One of my granddaughters, she's a cutie pie. She loves to run around naked. This is her thing. She loves it. And her parents have given her the freedom to do that. She's in a safe environment, and there's absolutely no reason why she shouldn't feel free to do that. Now, I can already hear some of you and your thoughts. Your conditioning is, that's not acceptable, that's dangerous, that's not, whatever your thoughts are telling you about that. Why? Why are your thoughts telling you that? Conditioning. When a baby comes out naked, do you get upset about that when it comes out of the womb naked? Do you? Is the baby upset about it?
No.
So what happens from that moment to now? If one of you was sitting here tonight fully naked, I can promise you it'd be making most of us uncomfortable, right? Because that's our conditioning, that there's something wrong with that. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that we should all stop wearing clothes. That is not what I'm saying at all. There is a purpose for conditioning. The conditioning that we have, the better conditioning, is to help us to be able to function together as a society, as families, as communities. Yeah. So we need some of that. When I taught school, I used to get frustrated sometimes because some of the kids, especially middle school, they hadn't had some needed conditioning, such as when you're in a wedding, you don't shout and scream, and hoop and holler. No, you reverence the moment, right? You don't act in a wedding ceremony the way you would at a football game. You can, but it's so we have these certain ways of relating that enable us to do well in life. So little cutie pie, she likes to run around naked. She is a free child. She is a free child. She feels safe. She feels loved. She respects herself. She doesn't feel the need to adapt herself to life and people. She just is being. Now, does she need to wear clothes? Yes. When she comes to the city, she has her little clothes on and her little shoes, and she understands that when she's in the city, that she needs to have clothes on, and she's fine with that. Okay? But she's still a free child on the inside. It's not shutting her down to wear her clothes. She likes that, and that is fine. So, adapted child. Think about how many ways did you adapt yourself to life? Right? And it can start really young. Like we're crying in the crib at night. Nobody comes. Nobody comes. Nobody comes. Nobody comes. What do?
Escape.
Yeah. Check out. Give up. Despair. So we begin at a very young age to adapt to life. The false self is a state of mind that's based on old memories and experiences and identified with false beliefs and lies. What is a lie or false belief that a little child has when mom doesn't come to get them in the middle of the night when they cry?
I'm not wanted.
I'm not wanted.
Not worthy.
I'm not worthy.
Yep.
No one's here for me. I'm alone. I'm in this alone. You see how see how these lies begin? And this is where the false self begins to form. The true self is a state of being that's based on now, this moment, right now, and it's identified with truth. No one here tonight is alone. But the false self, some of you may feel alone. The false self within you, the ego mind, tells you that you're alone, but you're not. Yeah. The false self feels separate. It believes that it's separate from God. But the true self feels connected and knows that it's always connected to God. Watched a beautiful documentary one time about a man, maybe 50s, 60s, who lived out in the jungle. He lived, I think, in one of the Hawaiian islands, and he lived completely alone. And he was just a loving, very enlightened soul, and he was constantly connecting to the plants and animals around him in the wild where he lived. He built a beautiful home for himself. He enjoyed meditating. He enjoyed connecting with nature. So he was alone, yet he was never alone. He was very, very connected. So the false self will tell you that you're separate from God, you're separate from others, you're separate from goodness, you're separate from happiness. The false self will also exploit and punish you for your weaknesses. Well, this is one of the things that happens when we start confronting the false self, or ego mind in ourself. As we see it and become aware of it, the ego will turn up the heat and then try to make us feel ashamed or guilty for the false self, and will try to exploit or punish us for our weaknesses. But the true self can just laugh at its weaknesses. Oh, there's me pitching a fit again, acting like a 2-year-old. Oh well. Oh, there's me feeling sad again. Oh well, I guess I just want to feel sad today. The true self will compassionately reparent our weak areas. The true self loves our weak areas and embraces them and coaches and mentors and listens to and works with our troubled areas. The false self forces change. When we begin to become aware of different aspects of ourselves that we're unhappy with, that false self will try to force us to do something about it. And then if we respond to that, we will usually end up changing back. Yeah. The true self just flows. It flows. It takes the path of least resistance. It's relaxed. It's relaxed even in the face of its weaknesses and difficulties. The false self is primarily characterized by fear and doubt. Yeah. So the ego mind is always telling you a story, and the plot, the theme is fear. Yeah. And it's always predicting a bad end to this story. But the true self is in love and in trust. Yeah, trusting life, trusting the self, trusting the process, trusting that others are going to be okay. They're going to be okay. I don't have to fix them or rescue them. They're on their path. They're finding their way, as am I. The false self is constantly engaging in JADE. If you've heard this acronym before here on the Judah channel, it's justifying, arguing, defending, and explaining. Remember the acronym JADE: justify, argue, defend, and explain. This is one of the fastest ways to start clearing the false self and releasing the ego's hold on you. When you hear yourself trying to justify your point of view, argue for a point of view, defend yourself, or explain something about yourself, that is a sure sign that the ego's at work. And if you can resist the temptation to go there, you'll immediately start feeling yourself get free and tapping into your true self. Yeah. And if you can't stop yourself, just laugh at yourself. I'm getting ready to do some jading. Here I go. I'm going to justify, let me just, and I do it with Chuck a lot, you know, I'm going to justify my point of view. The true self really is not intimidated by any circumstance or any perception of others. You know, so sometimes I'll read a comment, you know, on a YouTube video or something we put out, or I'll read something somebody posts, and it's very, very, very infrequent, but occasionally there'll be one that's pretty, you know, yucky. And, you know, I can learn a lot about myself when I read it. If I read it and it just doesn't hit anything in me, and I'm like, oh, just feel neutral about it, then I know that the ego's relaxed and in the background. Yeah. Do you guys remember the story that Chuck told about the monk there was a monk who was very well revered in his hometown, very respected, many followers, very wise and enlightened. And there was a young woman in his hometown who got pregnant out of wedlock, and she didn't want to out the father. So when they pressed her to ask who the father was, she pinned it on the guru, on the monk. And so when the baby was born, and they confronted him, said, "You're the father." She says, "You're the father." He said, "Is that so?" And so he took the baby and cared for the baby. Everybody in the town thought it was his, so he just took the baby and cared for the baby. Well, after a period of time, the young mother's guilt got to her that she told this lie, and she told the truth that the monk was not the father. So then they came back and begged for his forgiveness and took the baby away from him to care for it, the father of the young woman. And they said to him, "We're so sorry, we're so sorry. It's not your baby." He said, "Is that so?" So this is a characteristic of enlightened people who are being the true self. They're not affected by what other people think about them or say about them. They're just neutral. The circumstance can be wonderful or it can be horrible. And they're not influenced. They're steady, they're stable, they're fixed, they're immovable. So this is a test for us. In a few days, we're going to have a new president announced for our country. Can you be in your true self? Okay? Because see, the false self will lie to you and say, the world's going to end if this person is in power, or this country's going to go to shit if this person is in power. But that's not true. We've lived through Hitler's and Stalin's and Mussolini's in this world. And we will be okay. And you will be okay. And you can choose to be at peace in your inner being. The false self wants to control, and it wants to manipulate. Why? Why do we control? Well, we control because we're afraid. So some of you have made enormous strides in this area. You're rarely controlling. You rarely manipulate. But if you're given the right set of circumstances, the right trigger, you may fall into that pattern. Why? Because there's still a young part inside of you that's afraid. The false self needs to change things outside of itself. And the false self thinks, well, if I can just fix this aspect of my life, I'll be okay. The false self always has this narrative about what it wants and what it don't want. I need more of this to be happy, and I need less of this to be happy. I need more of this. If I have more of this, I'll be happy. If I have less of this, I'll stop suffering. And it always will tell you that. I remember having worked so hard to get my master's degree. And I was so excited. And then it was over, and that was it. And then I had to pay the $60,000 of debt for it. Yeah, and nobody cared whether or not I had a master's. Nobody cared. So there's always something. You think, well, if I just had this mate, or if I just had this apartment, or if I just had this different job, there's always something. This is the ego story. You need this to be okay. And until you get it, you won't be okay. And there are people who have everything, and they are not okay on the inside. Would you agree? They have it all. And there are people that have nothing that the culture and society believes are needed for happiness, and they are perfectly at peace. The false self will control and manipulate. It needs to change the external environment in some way in order to be okay, which lasts only momentarily. But the true self doesn't need to control and manipulate. It influences. It influences. The true self, the people who are fully self-actualized, those are the ones that really have influence over people. And they can guide others. Yeah. And the true self emanates love and wisdom, and that love and wisdom flows through the personality. It flows through your skill sets and your station in life. It emanates love and wisdom, which guides and influences but never coerces. The false self has a favorite mode of operation, and that's guilt and punishing. The false self is all heavily invested in the reward and punishment cycles. Yeah. You know, this is something that I never fully mastered as a school teacher. I had moments of it that I was thankful for, but there was always, as a teacher, there was either a focus on reward to get kids to do what we wanted them to do, or punishment to get them to stop doing things we didn't want them to do. This is that really heavy conditioning that I'm talking about. And, you know, I think we've probably been pretty successful at training one another to either reach for the reward or to stop doing certain things to avoid punishment. Yeah? But what about just learning because you just love to learn and you're excited and you're curious and you want to have a new experience? What about that? Just learning because it feels good and it makes you smile. Yeah. So the false self weaponizes guilt. When you do something wrong, quote unquote wrong, when you find yourself acting out in the false self and doing the ego thing, the anger or the frustration or the rage, or I don't know what your thing is. Mine was mostly sadness. Sadness was my go-to thing, feeling sorry for myself, being sad. You know what your thing is. So as you become aware of it, then the ego will try to come through the back door and punish you and make you feel guilty for doing it again, doing that thing again. You know? Guilt is a waste of your time, your energy, your attention. It serves no purpose whatsoever except just to make you feel bad. If you realize you've blown it on something, just say, okay, what do I want to do different? That didn't work out too good. What do I want to do differently? Yeah. If you've been married twice and divorced twice, and you know, some of you will not allow yourself to fall in love again because you think, well, I blew it the first time and the second time. And you feel so guilty about that you won't open yourself up to love again. Yeah. One of my favorite moments in my awakening was Chuck used to, when we would go on dates, he would put in Neil Donald Walsh's Conversation with God books. And we would listen to those in the car. And they were exactly the right thing for me. And if you are coming out of Christianity or you're rethinking your relationship to Jesus, I would say get Conversations with God and dig in on those. And let's see, what was I going to tell about that? Sorry, I lost my train of thought on that. Favorite things? I lost it.
Somehow it opened you up to love.
Oh, guilt and punishment. Oh, yes, thank you. So as I was listening to Neil Donald Walsh, he talked at the very end of his book about how he'd been married 7 times. And I was like, what? What the? 7 times? I mean, come on, Neil. But then it made me feel better. I was like, okay.
Not such a loser.
Yeah, I was like, well, but the thing was, we do this to ourselves and one another. We say, well, this person can't be a spiritual teacher because they did X, Y, and Z. And so that just disqualifies them in my book. Why do we do that to people? Because we do it to ourselves. Yeah. We think that there's something that we've done or might do that disqualifies us from being a spiritual person. Yeah. I mean, think about Eckhart Tolle. Think about all the fools that passed by him those 2 years that he slept on the park bench and that never gave him the time of day, or maybe offered him $1 or handed him a sandwich. If they had only known, they could have sat down with him and possibly been radically transformed by 30 minutes or an hour with this enlightened being. Yeah. Thank you for helping me remember. So don't feel guilty and don't punish yourself. Just actually stop doing it. And if you're doing something that you typically hate yourself for doing, like, I don't know, feeling sad and overeating and eating an entire bag of Cheetos, and if that's a thing that you do that you can't stand, then the next time you get that bag of Cheetos, just like get happy, right? Get happy. And I'm going to eat this whole freaking bag and I'm just going to enjoy it. And I'm not going to punish myself one bit. I'm going to eat every single Cheeto that I want to eat. You know, and then when you do that for a little while, you find the desire for those things kind of burning off. You'd be like, okay, I've got this out of my system now. I don't like Cheetos anymore. Cheetos. Yeah, right? This false self is always making demands. You got to shape up. You know, you can hear it. It's this little internal parent that you internalized. Yeah? Yeah. We don't need our moms and dads around as adults to keep us in line because we've internalized them in our head and they bark at us. The true self invites. It invites, it stays curious, and it invites you to change. It invites you to try something new. It invites you to feel different, but it never coerces you or makes demands. The false self always has strings attached, yeah? It always has strings attached. This is something that's challenging for me. Sometimes I want to do something for someone, but they're not yet at a place where they can receive it as love because they've never had the experience of love. They've never had an experience with someone else where there wasn't a give and take or an expectation, a strings attached. And so they have a hard time believing that I would do a certain thing for them just out of love. Yeah. The false self does what it wants to do, but it wants something in return. Yeah, but the true self just does what it wants to do. And it doesn't have any expectations of outcomes, and it doesn't need anything from the self or others. The true self just eats the bag of Cheetos and enjoys them. And when it's done with that. Yeah, and goes on to the next thing. The false self dominates. It needs to fix or control because it doesn't feel safe. You see, the false self needs its partner or its friends or its coworkers to adjust their behavior because it feels disturbed inside. And so it feels that if the other person will just adjust, then that disturbed feeling will go away. But the true self offers love and offers wisdom when asked. And it respects other people's free will choices. Respects their choices. The false self believes that you are the sum total of all of your experiences. But the true self is conscious of your experiences, aware of them, but knows the truth that you are not your experiences. You know, one of the things we need to work on as a family, in the Judah family and in spiritual circles, is when people have been seriously victimized or abused, that we make a space for them to be healed of that, but without reinforcing that they have an identity as being a victim, or an identity as being an alcoholic, or an identity as being 3 times divorced, or whatever. Some of you actually shouldn't say, I'm divorced. Why do you say that? Every time you say, I'm divorced, you're invoking your past relationship. And you are labeling yourself based on your past. Why would you do that? You're not divorced, you're just a person. You're a person who's single right now. That's all. The false self has, the true self observes all of its experiences from an unattached perspective. So one of the easiest ways to think about this, I use this metaphor a lot. It really helps me. If you can remember it in the moment, in a difficult moment, it can really help. So imagine that each of you is the star in your own play. This play, the headliner, the blinking lights, it says, The Life of Carolyn Cook. Yeah? And so she is the star of the play. She is the main character. And she has different people that interact with her in this play. Maybe her partner, her kids, her coworkers, whatever. Her neighbors. She has a setting, the city she lives in, and all of that. This whole storyline. So what happens in an awakening? What is an awakening? It's the moment that you wake up and you go, what am I doing on this stage? Who wrote this script? What is this? This is a crazy, why am I saying these lines? These lines don't even feel true to me. Why am I in this scene? Who wrote this scene anyway? And how is this thing going to end? So it's kind of like that, right? When you have an awakening. So one of the things that you learn, an awakening usually happens around this yellow ray. If you guys have our Realizing Enlightenment chart, usually right around in there is when you wake up. And so you wake up, you realize, ooh. So as you awaken, you go, oh, wait a minute. You hear somebody like me or Judah or Chuck say, you're creating your own reality. Oh, and then you start to kind of play with this a little bit. This is what happens after you wake and you think, oh, wait a minute, I'm creating my own really? Oh, so, let me just write this person out of my script. And let me write this person in. Okay, this feels a little better. I'm kind of liking this. Yeah, this is, okay. Oh, let me just rewrite this role. I don't like this role of angry, bitchy wife. So I'm going to write in a new script for myself. And so we begin to have this sense that we can change this play of our life. We begin to write the script. Okay. Now as we progress a little further in our enlightenment process, then we decide, I think I'm going to step off the stage and quit playing in the drama. Yeah? Because when we wake up to this ego drama of the conflict and the plot and the characters, and we're kind of like, ugh, let me just get off the stage. And so then we begin to sit in the audience and watch our character, our personality, our roles, and everybody else we interact with, and we just kind of observe it. Okay. And maybe we even direct a little bit, play the director a little while. Yeah. So this is when we're in our true self. You've heard this called the observer state. That's when we're detached from all the drama in our life, from our roles. So I have a new role that was written into this script, that I wrote into the script for me, and that's channeler. But I'm not just a channeler, guys. You understand that? Mm-hmm. Before I'm a channeler, before that, I am a soul realizing enlightenment. That's what I'm here for. Channeling is just a focus of source. Focus my soul so that my soul can become fully self-realized. Did you have anything you want to share, sweetheart, so far?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so this is something that I heard that really makes a whole lot of sense and really helps me a lot, and that is that we are not the body. I am not Chuck. I am the awareness of Chuck. I'm aware of everything Chuck does. I'm aware of who Chuck thinks he is. I'm the awareness. That's it. I'm not Chuck. I'm just awareness. This is just a body that my consciousness has come in to express God and to be aware of how God is expressing him or herself through me. So I'm the awareness. So everything that happens, you just become the awareness. I'm aware of this. I'm aware of this. That's who I am, the awareness, the consciousness. There one other thing that might help. When she talked about the Cheetos, what happens is, if you say, I can't help but eat these, now you've just programmed yourself to not be able to eat them, not eat them. Now, so if you say, I'm going to let myself eat them, now you're taking back over control. Now, okay, so you'll do that for a while, but then one day, okay, I'm going to eat them. Once you realize you're going to eat them, then you say, okay, I'm going to eat them and I'm going to enjoy them. And then one day you'll say, oh, I want some Cheetos, and it's like, oh, wait a minute. No, I don't. Because now you've taken back control, and then you have to have control and either to stop doing it. And so that goes with anything that you're doing that you can't help to do. Anything that you ever once in a while you'll do this, smoke, whatever, or whatever, if you take back control, then you can stop it. But you can if you keep saying, I can't help it. I have to do this, I can't help it. Then you're just programming yourself to not being able to help it. Words are so important. Words are so important. Every time we say something, we're making a contract. They never disappear. And so we have to be very, very careful. Like I think you said earlier about I am. Be careful about what you put after you say I am, because I am is God. And so God can be whatever God wants to be, good, bad, doesn't matter. God doesn't see anything as a negative or positive. You can't have positive without negative. And so, it just goes along. So be very careful about what you say after I am. I am tired. I am sick. I am all these things that we say. Just out of our unconsciousness.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. I'm going to leave now.
Oh, okay. So, as we're waking up to our true self, then we can be the observer in the audience, watching ourselves play the role of mom, watching ourselves playing the role of banker, watching ourselves play the role of package handler, whatever, sister, brother, whatever. Watching ourselves play the role, just observing, but realizing that that's not all that we are. It's just the way that we've chosen, the soul has chosen to focus its energy in order to create the warmth, the love that we are wanting to create. Yeah. So the false self believes that you are the sum total of everything that you've experienced, but you're not. You can reinvent yourself in every moment. You can reinvent yourself at any time. This is why people have midlife crises and, do crazy things like spend all their savings on a new red Ferrari or whatever, right? Because they feel that they're aligned, that they're misaligned, that they're not being the true self. They just don't quite know how to make the shift. Yeah. The true self is conscious of all your experiences, but knows that you exist outside of those experiences. You exist outside of your experiences. The true self observes the experiences from an unattached perspective. Yeah. And I tell this story a lot. I'll tell it briefly here. I had, this is a true story. A friend of mine that I used to travel and do a lot of women's conferences with, she had a twin sister, and both of these young girls were raped repeatedly their whole growing up years by their father, both of them. So they had the same trauma, right? But they both had two completely different outcomes, right? The one was always depressed, on medication, couldn't hold down a job, couldn't sustain a relationship, could never forgive her father. She's just totally in despair, and never overcame the fear story of the false self of being an abused victim of incest. Her sister, on the other hand, tells the story. Her sister was my friend, told the story that when these abuses were happening, there was a picture that a family member had given her of Jesus, and it hung on the wall in her bedroom. And she would look at Jesus during those traumatic events and literally be carried away by the presence of Jesus. She literally dissociated. We all understand dissociation. You know, she grew up, she put herself through school, she became a lawyer, she became an advocate for inner city kids. She did remarkable things in this city for inner city children. She even moved back and lived in the neighborhood and assisted these families in really practical ways. And she didn't have a drop of unforgiveness in her body, or bitterness or resentment or depression. She just had a beautiful partnership. She's just a beautiful person. So what is the difference? What is the difference? The difference is, yeah.
Perspective. It's,
yeah,
did it happen to me or did it happen for me?
right.
One took that experience and grew and empowered themselves. One despaired over it and could never get over what happened to them.
Right.
The other one took the experience and turned it into something for them.
Yes. And so on some level, our soul chooses our experiences. This is really hard to hear, especially in a difficult situation like that. But on some level, we know our soul has chosen our experiences in order to expand our divinity. And so when you're in a bad place and you're facing an aspect of the self, the false self, that's stubborn or whatever, just acting as if, okay, my soul is allowed this for a reason, and whatever that reason is, I'm going to use it to grow and expand my soul. I'm not going to be a victim of this. The false self has preferences and expectations that have to be met in order for it to be happy. But the true self has no preferences. The true self is okay with this, whatever this is. The true self accepts everything as it is. The false self judges emotions and categorizes them as good and bad, wanted and unwanted. But the true self welcomes all the emotions and doesn't judge the self at all for its experiences. So one of the big challenges that I've had in recent years, you know, I grew up as this good Christian girl that was patient and kind and serving and all of that, and never got angry. And so I repressed so much anger, and it manifested as depression. The depression started when I was 16, and I had depression off and on all through my adult years until I hit my 40s. So the true self embraces everything, the light and the dark, the yin and the yang, the good and the bad, the saint and the sinner, and welcomes all of it in its sameness. So one of my bigger challenges in the last few years has been as the anger has come up and manifested, and me just acting like a crazy, mad, angry person. And so for the longest time, because of my conditioning, I wanted to punish myself or feel guilty when I would act this way. And Do you want to share anything? Okay, go ahead.
So it's important to understand that the anger doesn't cause depression. It's depressing the anger, and that goes for any emotion. When you it's in the word depress. You're depressing the energy that wants to move into anger. So if you do that, you don't only not feel the downs, the depression, feeling bad, but you also don't have the highs. That's why people that are on antidepressants say, yeah, no, I don't have any downs anymore, but I don't have any ups either.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about depressing the energy that wants to move into that emotion, and it can be any emotion. It's not that anger creates depression.
Mm-hmm.
It's the repressing of it that causes it.
And Chuck worked with me so graciously through all of it. But the way I began to get free of it was to allow myself to be angry and not feel guilty for it, to realize there must be a reason why I feel so angry, and must be a good reason, right? and to just love my angry parts and accept them. And Judah was very clear with me that I would not get free of this aspect of the false self until I stopped wanting to amputate it from my life. Yeah. So even fear, if we experience fear, it's just an energy. We can just let it move through our body. And
Once again, be the awareness of the fear. Don't be the fear.
Right. And don't have any judgment about it. Okay, I'm feeling afraid right now. Okay, I'm having a panic attack right now. All right, well, it'll be over in a little bit. And guess what? It will. And you won't die. You'll be okay. You will get through it. And on the other side, you'll be back in your right mind. And when you have a panic attack or a rage attack, know that. Remember this, in the background, your soul can whisper to you, it's just your false self. Don't worry about it. It's not who you really are. Yeah. The false self is always bothered about something. Always. And it'll fix one situation or one bother or one disturbance, and then the next one will be lining right up behind it. Yeah? But the true self is relaxed. It's observant. It's curious. I'm curious. Why am I feeling angry? I'm curious. Why am I wanting to drink this third glass of wine tonight? I'm curious. And it just observes, but it's relaxed and unbothered by it. The false self is an actor playing a role on a stage, but the true self is the silent observer in the audience. And where you really get free is when you stop even watching the drama, and you just, a lot of times, if I see that picture, you see that picture again of your life playing out on the stage, and you're in some drama with somebody, and you're playing the role of the protagonist or the antagonist, whichever role you happen to be playing in the moment. If you're sitting in the audience observing it, right, you're just being observer. Look at me doing that thing that I do again with that person, that same old thing, the same old argument, the same old stupid thing, and I'm just watching it. If you have the presence of mind, you can just say, I think I'm just going to exit the building. And just envision yourself standing up, walking to the back of the theater, opening the door, and stepping out into the sunshine, shutting the door behind you. Because the ego, that's all the ego does, is create drama, right? And even that, if you even just have that awareness about yourself, look at me, I'm just all caught up in this drama in my head. Or look at me, I'm just all caught up in this drama with this person. And it can happen lickety-split, right? Lickety-split in a quick moment. I was at a friend's house a couple weeks ago and stepped into the kitchen, and there was somebody there. I just was introduced to them briefly. And within less than a minute, there was a political, and I was on the wrong team for their, from their perspective. And I just felt that, So, oops, I wandered onto a stage And this ego drama is about, you know, he's the antagonist and I'm the victim of his anger about me being on the wrong side. And so I just laughed and just exited the room. Yeah, get out of the drama. The false self collects some scaras in the subconscious mind like a hoarder. Now, what are samskaras? Samskara is a term from the Buddhist tradition. In the Buddhist tradition, it is said that every thought, feeling, experience, impression that you've ever had is imprinted in your psyche, on your soul, and the word for that is samskara. Now, this is an ancient teaching, but it's now being proven by science. Everything you've ever seen, heard, touched, felt, or experienced is still stored in your subconscious mind somewhere. The conscious mind can think 40 bits of information per second. The subconscious can process 40 billion bits of information per second. So there's a whole lot going on down in there, guys. So when you do that thing again that you're so sick of doing, don't beat yourself up. Understand that you're at war with the 40 billion bits of stuff, samskaras down in there. Yeah? So be a little patient with yourself. Your consciousness is choosing something new, something different, a new way. But your subconscious has a lot of ammo in there, right? So the false self collects all these samskaras like a hoarder. Yeah? And then it pretends it's unaffected by all of that. The true self operates in every moment with a clean slate. This is what enlightened people do that's different than what you and I do. They have a clean slate all the time, all the time, all the time, all the time. They are present in the moment, relating to the current situation without any thought about the past informing their action or inaction. The false self invents thoughts and uses them to reinforce its rights to be bothered or victimized. And the false self invents these storylines of fear and invents these thoughts. And if you take hold of the one thought it gives you, it'll give you another one, and then another one, and then another one. And then you're in the thought emotion loop like a hamster on the wheel, going around and around and around. Thoughts lead to emotions, to thoughts and more emotions and more thoughts and more emotions and more thoughts, until the world's, coming to an end. And suddenly in your mind, you've written this terrible end to Act 1, Scene 1. Yeah. The true self drops thought. It doesn't need to think about what's going on. It can just let whatever's going on just play out. Just let it play out. I mean, some of you are literally tormenting yourself about the outcome of the election. You're doing it to yourself in your head. Just let it play out and let it be what it is. If we get the person that you didn't want, guess why? Guess why? Because the collective consciousness wants that, is creating that. Okay? We're going to get what, and by the way, Judith's already made a prediction of the winner.
No, don't tell us.
I'm not going to tell you. I kind of let it get wheedled out of me in an interview. I didn't want to do that. But there's a reason why I don't share that stuff when Judith tells me stuff. Because I don't want to disempower you from your part of the co-creation, right? So, yeah. So the true self can just drop the thought, right? Drop the thought that you're going to suffer. Self-pity is our worst enemy, said Helen Keller. Said the woman who couldn't see, couldn't hear, couldn't speak. And if anybody had a right to feel sorry for herself, it was her, right? The false self wants you to believe that it is who you are. The true self knows that it is not the ego. It observes the ego, but it does not identify with it at all. It does not identify with it at all. This is one of the beautiful gifts of Judah Treats. If you get involved with the Judah Treats program, it's very inexpensive. It's a month-to-month subscription. You can cancel anytime. But one of the true gifts, if you get in and you really use it, one of the gifts is you will actually begin to discern your false self. Sometimes I'll have a certain thought and I'll think, where did that come from? So I'll stop and I'll say, Judah, the thought that I just had, did that come from a part? Yes. How old is that part? 4. Okay, Judah, do you see that part? Can you treat it? Yes. Okay, Judah, please tag and treat that 4-year-old. I can actually distinguish these parts. And I won't go into too much here, but basically what science and experimental psychologists have found out is that we all have parts. They learn this by working with schizophrenics and people with multiple personality disorder. That as they studied them and began to break through and find ways to help them, they began to understand that normal, healthy, mentally, emotionally healthy people have around 200 parts or personalities, sub-personalities. So that means there are, maybe 2,000 of us here tonight. So normal, healthy, mentally healthy, emotionally stable people have around 200 parts. And then people with severe trauma, torture victims and people with really serious situations can have up to 1,000 or more parts. So these parts or aspects of our personality develop in response to trauma. They are the false self. They are little false selves running around in our head creating chaos. And that's the beauty of Judah Treats, is you can learn to recognize them and actually neutralize them and completely integrate them back into your higher self. So the only thing that allows the false self to exist is your belief that it is who you are. The truth is you are innocent. You are innocent. You are wise. You are God in a body. You are all that is. The glory, the wonder, the majesty, the undescribable wisdom that holds the stars in the sky, that keeps them from falling out of the sky, has focused itself into you, into Otto, into Kent, into Mike, has focused part of itself into you, into your body, your circumstance, your situation, your personality. And the purity, when you clear these aspects of the false self, then the pure light shines through you and you literally begin to shine. And people say, wow, you're glowing. Wow, what's going on with you? You look great. What have you been doing? Yeah? Okay, good. All right, let's do a little group healing. How about that? I'm going to say goodbye to our live stream audience. Wish you could be here. Come join us.